Good morning, sir.
Well, today I'm going to briefly discuss with you about the concept of elasticity and how elasticity is calculated, namely price elasticity of demand. You may recall that yesterday, in the last part of my lecture, I told you that the law of demand uh, tells us that if price of any product increases, demand comes down. And if price falls, then more of that good is demanded. So this is a kind of relationship which we arrive. So it tells us about a general direction, but it does. The law of demand does not tell us about that if price is increased by a certain percentage, let us say, how much it will impact the demand. So, and why the managers are interested in knowing that, the reason is that it affects the total revenue, because if you increase price and good happens to be the elastic, then the revenue will fall. So that may prove to be counterproductive. So that is why an understanding about the elasticity is very important for managerial decision making. So, for example, here on your screen, you can see that scenario is given that the website design charge, and currently your costs are rising, including you consider raising it to 250. So the question posed here is that price and quantity. So 200, if you increase to 250, earlier it was 12 website demand, how much? And so this question is that, and how it is going to affect the revenue. Revenue is nothing but price into quantity. So you can see these two variables, they interact, So we arrive at. So let us, so that is why elasticity concept is very relevant for decision, because, price is one of the most important factors. In marketing, you have studied fees of marketing, so price plays. So price is considered to be one of the most important factors. So what I will do that I will tell you that what are the various types of elasticity concepts, and like namely price elasticity, income elasticity, and cross elasticity. You should keep in mind that the factors that affect the demand, like price of the related goods like substitute and complement and income, these factors also affect the demand, and that is why we have a measure of elasticity. But if you understand price elasticity of demand, other thing will. So, so the question is, what is elasticity? Elasticity is a measure of how much one variable respond to change in other variable. Like one variable is price and another variable is demand, that is quantity demanded. So how much one variable, if you change this variable, how much quantity demanded, whether it will increase or decrease, how much it will. So that is why this, or if it is income, one variable, to change income and increase, how much the quantity demanded of particular increase, or price of substitutes, let us say, increase or decrease, both could be measure how much quantity demanded will increase or decrease. So that is why elasticity is measured by using by a numerical measure of elasticity is there. The formula is this: percentage in quantity demanded, percentage change in price. As I told you that there are three types of elasticity mainly measured: price elasticity, income elasticity, and cross elasticity. So percentage in quantity demanded divided by percentage change. For example, if we calculate percentage change in price is 10, quantity divided 10, and the percentage change in price is 10, elasticity will be 1. If percentage change is, let us say, quantity demand is 10 and change in price is 8%, it will be greater than 1. If it is 10%, let us say, and if the change in price is, let us say, it will be less than. So we will have these measures. So here, so we will get a value which will be either greater than 1 or less than 1 or equal to 1, which is a theoretical possibility. Normally, it does not happen. Just to explain to you that what happens if it is. So let us take an example to understand it. The same thing has been explained here, like 15%, and now in order to calculate price elasticity of demand. For example, if we take the example of a website, which I just the which we have taken. So here, what normally what happened, that percentage change is calculated as percentage is calculated, that like change divided by starting point, whatever is to be arrived at the percentage. Now, naturally, change is that beginning value and the starting value. So, if website the price is 250 and the previous price was 250, so this is the change in price divided by the beginning price, that is 200. So 50 divided by, so it will be like, so 20 the 0.25 between that 25%. So I think that all these things, so no need to reiterate. But why I am discussing this thing is with a purpose. The purpose is that if we calculate, for example, if I say that price is 200, that is increased to 250. Now, higher price, naturally, here earlier it was 8 units, 8 website demand was there, now 250. Sorry, 212 website, and now 258. So what is happening is that that if you calculate change in price and change in quantity here, percentage change. Now, for example, if the price is increased from 200 to 50, you calculate how much is the percentage change, and quantity falls from 12 to 8. So how much is for increase? And if you calculate, if you calculate for decrease, for example, if price falls from 250 to 100, you will get a different number. So this is somewhat, not logical, that if you are asked to find out elasticity for increase in price and decrease in price, you will get a different number. That is why in calculation of elasticity, what is done, that some adjustment is made. That is starting point change in price. So we take average price, that is the beginning price P1 and P2, divided by 2, that is the average price. Similarly, for quantity, in numerator, there is no difference. We again take Q1 plus Q2, that is the average quantity. So we take average quantity instead of starting point. For example, if you are asked to find out change, here. So what will happen is that you will say that 50 divided by the price 12. Okay. 50 divided by 200. Now we will take 250 plus 200 and will take the average. Similarly, for price, we will take in denominator this divided by 2. So here it will be 10 and here it will be 225. In earlier case, for example, the typical way to calculate is to use that change divided by starting point, where you started. The reason why we do it, the reason, as I told you, that if you are asked to find out price elasticity for increase or decrease, you will get different numbers. And if the difference in price is larger, then you will get a different elasticity measure, which is not. So that is why this adjustment is made. So let us see that, the same way, price percentage change, we call it midpoint formula. This is called midpoint. Midpoint is nothing but average. If it is P1 plus P2, then you divide, take the average. If it is key numerator Q1, Q2 divided by, so it is midpoint measure. So this same thing has been done here to calculate, the elasticity of a site, which I just showed to you. That here the change naturally was 50, and in numerator we have taken this 250. This is 250 plus 200 divided by 2, which is 220. Similarly, for price, we have taken here 8 divided by 2, that is 10. Other thing remains same. This is a change in price and multiply. So it has come out to be that the percentage change in price is this much, change in quantity is this much. And formula for calculating elasticity is simply percentage change in quantity demanded divided by percentage change in price. So you put these values. So the 40 divided by this, you will get a numeric, that is elasticity is greater than which demand is. And if elasticity is greater than 1, demand is considered to be elastic. If it is less than 1, it is called inelastic. And if it is equal to 1, it is called unitary elastic. In the same percentage we will go. So this is how we calculate elasticity. And please keep in mind that when we are trying to calculate price elasticity, you will get a coefficient which is negative, minus. For example, here change, if you see here, it will be 50. And here if you change, the 8, 12, you will get a number, because elasticity is that whenever you are calculating, it will be 8 minus actually 12. So it will, you get the number which will be negative. So they have put it because hardly makes, reason is that you will get a number which will always be negative, because if price increases, quantity demanded falls. So therefore it is positive, it is negative. So you will get a number which coefficient. That is why even if we ignore this thing, it will hardly make any difference, because it implies that this is going to happen. So that is why elasticity, price elasticity will always be a negative coefficient, and if we ignore it, then it will not affect the interpretation. Whereas in other cases, one has to keep in mind, because that will lead to change in interpretation of elasticity. So this is the, and I'm leaving this example, you can work out as that been worked out. Now the question is that what are the various, factors that affect price elasticity. So there are various factors that what we call determinant of price elasticity. First factor is that to what extent elasticity will affect the demand, the availability of substitutes. Details, of course, are there in my notes. The first factor is the substitutes. The greater the number of the substitutes available for the product, more elastic will be there. And because consumer price of anything increases, consumer can switch to easily, or if the other product, if substitutes are available, the price of X increases, price of Y remains constant, then the availability of other substitutes, the number of more, then the consumer can switch. That is why the greater the availability of substitute, more elastic. There are some products which are, substitutes may not be available, like the maybe certain type of drugs, certain type of medicine which are there. One has to. That is why those demands are not elastic. Then again another important aspect is that goods which are necessity, they are less elastic, because people will continue to consume these even if prices have gone up. Whereas the luxury that those, for example, one is planning for a cruise ship, the like the holiday in some places. So price the ticket and other things, the air ticket and the prices have gone up. People can postpone it because they will not die if they do not avail do that. So that is why if the good is the essential item, necessity, it will be relatively inelastic. Luxurious products are more elastic. Then also another important factor is that the time period. In short period, demand is not very elastic, but because you know that if price of anything has increased, consumer will not automatically switch to other because they may not be knowing about substitute available like that because of certain habits they have developed. They may continue to use that, but in the long run, if it price has gone up, they may switch over. So that is why the shorter is the period, less elastic is the rate. Longer is the period, more elastic. Then another factor is that how much money they spend it, expenditure on a particular item. How much? Now, if any product is there where very small percentage is spent, even if prices have gone up, people will not, consumer will not bother much. But if any item, takes away larger proportion of expenditure of consumer budget, then it is likely that the consumer may switch to other products because that eat into their budget and that affects their budget. So that is why the lower the amount is spent on any particular item, less elastic will be. The more the proportion is spent on a particular item, the more elastic will be the demand. So these are some of the factor details are given in my slides. You can go through all these things are explained. As I told you, that the why elasticity is important. There are certain types of demand curve. Just let me just quickly go through these things. You know, for example, this type of is a vertical line. Is a theoretical possibility. So price, the formula price elasticity percentage in Q, you see that the quantity is constant only at any price. So that is why if anything in numerator is zero, so elasticity will be zero. Another possibility may be inelastic demand. You know that when price and quantity relationship is there, whether a good will be elastic or inelastic will depend upon, for example, change in price is this much, whether quantity demanded falls by this much or by larger amount. That is why it works out to arrive at. So here change in, you can see in the diagram here, the fall is this much, but quantity demanded is only this much. So change in Q and change in P is greater. So therefore, if you put this value, it is less than, and then it will be elasticity will be less than. So this kind of slightly steeper curve. For example, if you have got two curves, one is like this. Sorry, one is steeper like this, and another is like this. So is flatter. So this curve will be inelastic relatively, and this will be more. You can see here. For example, this is the change in price. Change in price is only this much. Change in quantity. Whereas you see here that this is larger. So the steeper the curve, less elastic will be demand, and elasticity will be less there. Then unit elastic mean that this if you take in diagram, this is equal, both this and this change in price, so therefore it will be equal to 1 in graph. Then elastic I have already, while you can see the same one. Your change is only this much, whereas it is greater. If you put this value, you will get a value which will be greater than 1. So that is why elastic demand are, so if you, and a kind of demand curve which you have encountered in a perfect competition where the firms do not have any control over the price because there are a large number of sellers are there, and so it takes price as given. That is why a horizontal line is there in a demand curve there, and they can sell at anything at this price. So for instance, if we face a this kind of demand curve, then you can see that the percentage any so the any percentage change and divided by, because change in quantity you can sell it sorry the quantity is any percentage change divided by zero, because this change is zero, this is constant. So anything divided by zero will be infinity. That is why demand in horizontal demand is infinity. So the price elasticity of demand on a linear demand curve varies for various that if you encounter this thing, you may think that it is different. It will not be different because it is a straight line, because any straight line change is constant. But you should keep in mind that the formula for percentage elasticity is percentage in quantity demanded divided by percentage in price. So this is how we arrive at. Now, if you just further elaborate on this thing, so this will be change upon Q, the change upon it's a delta P upon divided by this. Now, if you just slightly manipulate this thing, so it will become like this. So this P upon Q, this is constant on a straight line. Change is constant. You have studied calculus, whereas this is varying. So this P upon Q ratio is varying, and that is why on this demand curve, if you see here, this P upon Q, this is this much, and this is here. If you divide anything by this, what will happen? It will be infinite. For example, this is this much, and whereas this is this much and this much. So naturally, elastic. Here it will be exactly, the distance P and Q ratio will be exactly equal. And here P ratio is this much, whereas the Q is this much, larger. So therefore, a smaller number divided larger will be less than 1. And the last point here is that P is 0 and this. So naturally, it will be a situation like this. It will be 0. The slope is constant, but it lasts. That is why this is the reason why we find that this elasticity and linear demand curve is different. So this relationship between quantity and demand is important, as I told you. One reason is that if demand is elastic and if one increases the price, total revenue will fall. If demand is inelastic and you increase the price, then total revenue will not fall, because because the change in quantity demanded will be fall, but will be less than the increase in price, because there are certain products like pharmaceutical products. Even if price increase, for example, insulin, people will continue to use it because there is no. Whereas if you increase the price of luxury cruise falls by 10, it will increase total revenue because demand is elastic. Whereas if you raise the price by 10%, total revenue will not fall, because it will not fall because the change in price and the quantity will fall because of this increase in 10% insulin. But this is larger, if you can show it in this way, than this. So therefore, it will pull up the total revenue. Total revenue is the product of this. The quantity is falling, but you know that because insulin is essential, is necessity for the patient, they may continue to use it. Whereas the luxury product, if you increase the price by 20%, the total revenue will fall, because people, will not die if they do not avail of this. So that is why all these are explained in my slide why this happens. You can go through. You can also read. I have already told you. Now, in as we have studied price elasticity. So the formula price elasticity is that percentage change in quantity demanded divided by percentage change in price. Okay, this is the formula for price elasticity of demand. Now, if we want to find out the income elasticity of demand, ED, so this will remain same, and in the denominator it will become percentage change in income. Well, but here you can ignore the coefficient. If minus will always be there, then for example, you get number, you do not write minus sign, negative sign, it will not. But here you have to retain this, whether it is a number is positive or negative. For example, if you get a number positive coefficient, it means that the good is normal good. As income increases, more of that is demand. If coefficient is negative, it means that the good is inferior, because as income increases, less of that good is demanded. That is why we have to retain this sign. Then another measure is cross elasticity of demand. Cross, the word cross, this is same thing has been explained. Now, cross elasticity of demand try to measure the change in price, because there are two types of good. One is substitute, another is complementary. Complement X and Y software and other, they are used together. Substitute X and Y. If price increases, people can will demand more of Y. So like this. So here the formula one has to keep in view that whenever this happens, that if you have to take percentage in quantity demanded for good X, percentage in price. For example, if there are substitute products, Coke and Pepsi, and you call it Coke 1 and this is called 2. So here in numerator, you will have to take percentage in quant, and let us assume the how much change in quantity demanded of Coke has occurred. Okay, and how much price change in the other substitute has occurred. So here we do not take the same quantity demanded and quantity the change in price. Rather, we take into account the percentage in demand for the other product, that is substitute, caused by change in the price of the substitute. So that is why and if you get a number which is greater than 0, it means that the good is complementary, substitute product. If you get a number which is negative, then it means that the good is the complementary good, and it can also be understood. For example, if price of X increases, let us say Coke, the quantity demanded of, let us say, Y will increase, because consumer will switch. That is why both are positive and positive, therefore the coefficient will be positive. So whereas if, let us say, it is a complementary, let us keep in mind the software and hardware, just for facilitate your hardware. Let us say the price of hardware increases. Now, because of this, what will happen, that demand for hardware, because which has to use with this, the quantity demanded will fall. That is why one is as positive, another, so the end result will be a negative coefficient. That is why this also. So if you get a number which is negative, then it is a good. So these are some of the measures of elasticity which we find. Other things are also there, percentage in quantity supply and like that. But I have no intention of. Now, if you have any question, you can ask.
So, while calculating the price elasticity of demand, we took the average of the percentage change in price. So, while calculating the cross price elasticity, or do we need to take the average, or will just take the change?
You have to use midpoint formula all along. Okay. So because if you calculate for whatever it is, for example, if there are two goods, let us say X and Y. Okay. So same thing, midpoint formula, you have to use it for all practical purpose, for calculation. that will be relevant. Because, for example, if I ask you that the price of coke has increased from this, and you find out elasticity, and price of coke has fallen, what will be the effect on demand of the other substitute? So you will get different number. That is why in denominator, that is the in calculation, you have to use midpoint formula. Same like for income elasticity for every, that will be applicable for. Otherwise, you will get different numbers. One thing is there that if the change is very small, if very change is very small in price, then there will not much difference in the elasticity. But especially if the change is large, then it causes huge increase in elasticity. That is why in denominator everywhere, whether a change in income, so in here average income before and after. Okay, will be there. Here every end value, whatever it is, whether it is the income, for example, the change in price of one good, let us say hardware, divided by the midpoint. The midpoint simply means that the beginning and end value, the starting value and life. Not like the conventional way of calculating change, because the reason is that if we are asked to find out income elasticity when income has increased from certain level, and asked to find out income elasticity, income has fallen, you will get a different number. That is why to avoid this. Any further question if you have, you can ask. I understand that the treatment of this could have been much more elaborate, but I'm sure that if you go through my slides, and all things have been explained in very clear cut way and in lucid way. And if you find it any difficulty, I'm not inaccessible. You can ask me for clarification, or if there is any further issue, I can further engage class. But for now, I think that I'm done with the first unit, what the major part of that. So and naturally, will not develop mastery if I engage class of elasticity one class. Normally, it is spread over 2 or 3 period, and we are discussing in one period. But I have also the benefit of the experience of teaching economics, so that is why I can also, distill the entire lecture in few minutes as well. So I think that, and what is the crux of that, so that at least the salient features are firmly implanted in your mind. Whenever you read it, if you are careful, you will be able to understand it. So if you do not have any further question, I will close it, because I have to rush for a meeting at 10:30 in the department. And but please go through carefully. In case of any difficulty, please feel free to approach me if you find any difficulty whatsoever. Okay.
So we have class tomorrow as well.
No, I will not engage class tomorrow now. Okay. But if there is any particular specific problem, first I will advise you, please go through this thing. Okay.
Sir, I want you to discuss about the equilibrium once.
You want to? Okay. Just you can ask me right now. I will discuss. What is the problem? What is the problem with equilibrium?
Sir, while seeing the equilibrium price, do we need to check demand and supply both at the same time, or do we need to see the demand only, the change in demand or price?
No, please keep in mind that the simple thing is that all has been explained in my slide. That if you take the demand and supply, okay, let us say that this is supply and this is demand curve, and this is equilibrium point, okay, price and this is quantity demanded. Okay. This is a very simple situation. Let us assume that the supply demand increases given the supply, so we will have a new equilibrium. Price will go up and quantity demanded will also increase. Our supply is reduced, then So it means that either the demand is changing or supply is changing. Okay, but if the situation is like that, both are changing. For example, demand has also gone up, supply has also gone up. Demand has also fallen and supply has also fallen. This is one thing. Demand has increased, supply has decreased. Demand has decreased, supply has increased. Simultaneous. Now, in this kind of situation, there is some problem occurs because if you are changing both simultaneously, and it has been explained in my slide, I have included 3 or 4 slides for each situation scenarios. Now here what is happening is that demand is increasing, so the supply is also increasing. Question is that whether it will affect, whether the price will increase. One thing is clear, that quantity demand supplied will be increased because on both counts. But whether it will also result in increase in price or not, that will depend upon whether the increase in demand is greater than the increase in supply or not. If the increase in demand is lower than, for example, supply increases by 100 units, whereas the demand has increased by only 80. So naturally, the price will not increase, but quantity demanded, the quantity supplied will increase. So these kind of situations are there. And in some situations, unless we know the magnitude, we cannot, arrive at any inference. That may be an ambiguous situation. Okay. So one effect may be clear. For example, price effect may be clear, price effect on price may be clear, or quantity supply may be clear, but it may not be clear the other variable. So those scenarios are discussed in my slide. And so equilibrium situation is, as I told you, just to enable you to understand, if the departure is there. Simple situation like demand is greater than supply is not equilibrium situation. So price will go up, quantity, the suppliers will also supply more, but they will charge high price. Other situation like, so world is of disequilibrium, world is not of equilibrium. Okay, so these situations are there, which are explained in my slide, and I advise you that go. Still, if you find difficulty, then I have no problem in engaging further class.
Sir, I have one question.
Yes.
Sir, on increasing the price, why the supply increases?
It acts as an incentive. That if price is increased of anything, that given the cost of production, what is the profit for a firm? What is the price? Price, the cost of production, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
For example, if price was 10 rupees, cost of production is 8 rupees. So how much is profit? 2 rupees. Okay. If price is increased to 11, cost remains same. What is the incentive for producer to supply? How much will be the profit? So one thing is that it will incentivize the producer to supply more at a higher price, isn't it? And because that will result in greater increase. So they will be motivated to supply more in the market. This is one reason. Other reasons are also there, but I think that this explains why because if demand, because the price, and if the cost is increased further, so that may not, and moreover, it also depends upon situation. For example, the supply will increase or decrease, depend upon the capacity. If the companies are already working at full capacity, they may not. But one reason is that it acts as an incentive. Please, I advise you that go through this word carefully. Incentive. It motivates because it results in higher profit to the producers.
Thank you, sir.
So if you can note down, and if to just to the for health, if there is a further issue, I can engage.